الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. We are continuing our discussion on Islamic manners. And yesterday we spoke about the manners of visiting and accepting or rejecting an invitation. We also spoke about when you visit someone's home to keep in mind that you are not there to inspect the person's home, to look at the person's home, to find out secrets about the person or how they live, but rather you are simply visiting them as a visitor, and you should keep that in mind. The next thing that Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda rahmatullahi alayhi mentions is burdening one's host with requests. So he mentions that whether visiting friends or relatives, one must avoid unnecessary requests that may cause inconvenience to the host. For example, avoid using their phone, going to the toilet, or performing your ablution. And we discussed this section yesterday, how when you are visiting someone, you should be honored by the fact that they're allowing you to come to their house, and you should not complain about things that you may find wrong with their house or things that you may find inconvenient. For example, if the food may not taste well, or the house may not be kept properly, it may be a little bit dirty, you should not complain about those things. These are just matters of takalluf and causing difficulty to that person when they have went out of the way to invite you and to prepare a meal for you and to take out their time to host you. You should not find problems with the way that they are hosting you. And this actually goes into a much bigger picture or a greater issue of when people go to the Haramain, when they visit the Kaaba, or when they go to Medina, either Mecca or Medina, when they go for Umrah or for Hajj, oftentimes you will find people complaining about the situation there. Either the bathrooms are too dirty, or their hotels are very dirty, or the food may not taste good. They may complain about whatever issues they are facing there. Especially during Hajj time, you will find many people complaining either regarding Mina or Arafat or Muzdalifah or anywhere in these different places, these different areas that we go to when performing Hajj and Umrah. And this is something that we should really refrain from doing, because Allah Ta'ala has invited us. We should think of it this way, that Allah Ta'ala has invited us to His home. And the same way that if someone comes to our home and we do not like it, if they are to complain that the food doesn't taste good, or the bathrooms are dirty, or your living room is dirty, or your bookshelves aren't kept properly, these small things that people may complain about, they would hurt us, and we may never invite them back again. Right? If you invite someone and they're complaining about you or your home, why would you invite them back? In the same way, when we visit Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's home, when we visit Makkah and Medina, we do not want to complain about these places, because this is Allah Ta'ala's Kaaba. This is the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if one complains, they may never know. Allah Ta'ala may not invite them back. So these are things that we should keep in mind, right? We should be people who do not complain about things easily. Rather, we are always content with whatever we have, and we should always be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, that if you are grateful, if you are thankful, then I will increase you. So the more shukr you do to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever you have, whatever situation you're going through, whatever a hosting a person has done for you, if you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and are grateful, then Allah ta'ala will increase you. Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda rahmatullahi alayhi mentions, when greeting a group of people, when you're invited to a home or to a party, when you enter the room, greet everyone inside, right? So this may be two different situations, right? Where when you go to someone's home, You say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. You make it known that you are there, as I discussed when entering even your own home, even though someone may not be at home, even though when you're saying Assalamu alaikum, you may not hear any wa alaikum assalam because no one's in the home, but you should still say Assalamu alaikum because the angels are there. And if people are there, then you want to make it known that you are there so that they are not startled by your presence. And the same way, when you're visiting someone, when you're in a gathering, you should also make your presence known. You should say Assalamu alaikum to the people there. However, you should be mindful of the situation that the people are in. So oftentimes you will find that when people walk into the masjid, they will say Assalamu alaikum very loudly. And they don't realize, or sometimes they do realize, but they think that it is an act of piety to still say Assalamu alaikum very loudly, although there may be a bayan going on, people may be reading the Quran, people may be engaged in dhikr, and they are burdening them by saying Assalamu alaikum very loudly. And we know that when someone says Assalamu alaikum, it is now wajib for you to reply, right? It is not wajib for you to say salam to someone, but when someone says salam to you, now it is wajib for you to reply. So you are burdening the people now that they have to all reply to you, right? So I just want to leave this, I want to mention this important point, that when the ulama say that we should say Assalamu alaikum when entering into a gathering, we need to be mindful of what is going on in that gathering. So if there's a talk, if there's a bayan, if something important is happening where we may be disturbing them, then we should not say Assalamu alaikum out loud. But if they are just simply conversing with one another, and it is not bothering anyone by saying salam, then we should say salam to make it known that we are there. Also, when we go to say salam, as we learned through the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that he taught us, one should say salam to the elders first. One should first say salam to the elders. The Prophet ﷺ said that the elders come first. And in another hadith that is mentioned in At-Tabarani, the Prophet ﷺ said, start with the elders. And in another narration of the same hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, start with the notables, meaning the respected ones, the ulama, the knowledgeable ones, the elders, the notable among the people that are there. The next section that Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abdul Ghudda mentions, Abu Ghudda, is to stay in touch with people, to stay in touch with people. Now, this is something that is very easy for us to do nowadays, but unfortunately it seems that with the ease of technology that we have, unfortunately at times it seems that we are more distant than people. We are more distant from people than people would have been in the absence of these different forms of technology. So we have the ability to text people nowadays, to call people nowadays, to email people nowadays. It's very easy to keep in touch. Yet regardless, despite all of these different things, unfortunately, at times we do not take advantage of these things, and even siblings or children with their own parents are very distant. If you cannot visit your relatives, friends, or acquaintance, you could still keep in touch by calling them or sending them a letter. This will leave them with a deep, loving impression and will keep the relationship alive. So it is stated, Al-Fadl ibn Marwan said that inquiring about your friends is like meeting them, right? So even asking how they're doing, or sending them a letter, or sending them a text message, or sending them an email, it is as if you are visiting them, and inshallah you will get the same reward. In the situation that we are in nowadays, in lockdown, we have a lot of free time on our hands. This is a perfect opportunity to reach out to the family members that we have not spoken to in a long time, and we can now reach out to them and ask them how they are doing and catch up on in the times that we could catch up on how their lives are going. And the section of visiting people, the manners of visiting, they are very detailed. And I mentioned this previously, that I'm not going to go throughout the entire book and cover every single word of this book or every single chapter of this book. But inshallah, this leaves us a brief understanding and an outline of how we should conduct ourselves when we visit people. But the next section that is mentioned, and this is an important section, this is the last section that we will be covering inshallah from this series until after Ramadan. but this is the manners of conversation. And this is an important subject because although we may not be visiting people and we may not be going to people's homes all the time, or we may not be calling them as often as we should be, but we are still conversing with individuals, even if it be individuals in our own household. So how should we conduct those conversations and how should we converse with one another? Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hajj, describing the believers, وَهُدُوا إِلَى الطَّيِّبِ مِنَ الْقَوْلِ وَهُدُوا إِلَى صِرَاطِ الْحَمِيدِ, that and they have been guided to the purest of talk and guided to the path of him who is worthy of all praise. This is a description that Allah Ta'ala gives of the believers, that they only speak that which is pure. وَهُدُوا إِلَى الطَّيِّبِ مِنَ الْقَوْلِ, pure speech. As a believer, you should not be worried about those things that do not concern you. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that min husn al-Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'nihi. Min husn al-Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'nihi, that from the beauty of one's iman, from the beauty of one's Islam, is that they leave that which is not concerning to them. So if something does not concern you, you should not be inquiring about that or asking about that or thinking about those things that are not related to you, as intriguing as they may be, right? We see things that are going on in society or people that we know. We may hear some rumors about them, but Allah Ta'ala tells us in the Quran, and the Prophet ﷺ explains to us in the ahadith, that these are not things that we should be concerned about. When you talk during your visit, say only what befits the situation and be brief, right? These things, when we are not mindful about them, they can actually cause a lot of hardship and sadness to the people that we are speaking to. It is very common for people who have not spoken in a long time to ask questions like, oh, what, you still aren't married? Or, oh, you still didn't have children? Or these type of things that you don't know what's going on in their life. You don't know the situation that they're in. Perhaps they are trying to have children, or perhaps they are trying to get married, or perhaps something difficult is happening in their lifetime. And by you asking these questions, it can cause them hardship. It's not that they're not necessarily avoiding the things that you are asking them about. They may be actively trying to get married, or they may be actively trying to have children, but they are unable to for whatever reason. And so by you reminding them of that or keep bugging them, although you will not get any benefit out of it, that is something that we should avoid. So this is what Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghadda is mentioning, that don't speak unless you are asked to, or unless you know that your talk will be well received and will please the host and the other guests. There are many times where you may say something in a lighthearted fashion. You may say something very mildly. You don't think that it is something that will offend anyone, but they may get offended by it. It may actually hurt a person. Aisha radiallahu anha mentions that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke so few words that you could count his words. And this is one of the beauties of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's speech, that they were so few in number, yet you can write books and books and books and collections on describing and explaining the speech of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we have this, right? We have the ahadith, you have Bukhari, you have Muslim, you have Tirmidhi, all of the books of ahadith that we have. And then for these different books, there are a number of explanation and commentaries, not just one commentary on Sahih Bukhari. Rather, you have dozens and dozens and dozens. And likewise for all of the books of the ahadith. And this is because of the hikmah that the Prophet ﷺ had when he spoke. He spoke very few words, but the words that he spoke were meaningful and they did not hurt anyone. The Prophet ﷺ, one time, he was passing by, I believe it was Anas radiallahu anhu's brother. And his brother had a bird. And the Prophet ﷺ said jokingly, Ya Aba Umair, ma fa'ala nughayr, what happened to the small bird? Right? And this is a very small, light-hearted expression. As you can see, it rhymes. Ya Aba Umair, ma fa'ala nughayr. So it rhymes. Right? And from this small statement of the Prophet ﷺ, very small statement, the reason why the Prophet ﷺ said this is because the bird died. So the Prophet ﷺ was joking with him that what happened to this bird of yours? From this very small statement, the scholars have mentioned dozens and dozens of wisdoms that we can learn from this. From among the wisdoms that the scholars have mentioned, and you may just think, what can you derive from this? All the Prophet ﷺ said is, "O Abu Umair, what happened to your bird?" That's all the Prophet ﷺ said. But there are literally dozens and dozens of points of wisdom that we could learn from this. From among them is, and I'll just give some examples of how the ulama derived wisdoms from the statements of the Prophet ﷺ. One thing is that the Prophet ﷺ is showing that it is permissible to have pets, right? So it's permissible to keep pets. Another thing, the Prophet ﷺ was joking around with people. And so it is permissible to be lighthearted with people, right? The Prophet ﷺ rhymed, right? It was a rhyming phrase. It was a lighthearted expression. It was another thing that that the ulama mentioned is that when a person is grieving, when a person is going through difficulty, his bird passed away. Anas radiallahu anhu's brother's bird passed away. So the Prophet ﷺ was trying to make him lighthearted, make the mood light and make him laugh. Another thing is that it is permissible to joke around with children, to play with children, to make them happy. So all of these different wisdoms we learn from a simple statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us that if you qulil khayr, speak truth, أو ليصمت من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت, that whoever believes in Allah on the day of judgment, in the last day, they should either speak good or they should remain silent, right? A very simple recipe to, inshallah, ensure that one does not harm anyone or hurt anyone, or that one does not do anything that will be displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from among those individuals who have perfect manners and carry ourselves in a way that He would be pleased with. I want to make an announcement that this will be the last um, this will be the last lecture series this will be the last lecture from this series of essentials of character until after Ramadan, because during Ramadan, inshallah, we will have many different programs that will soon be announced to the community, but we will be pausing this lecture series, and inshallah we will continue this lecture series after Ramadan. So we will not have a program tomorrow, but inshallah from Friday we will continue with different programs. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.